Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cause and Effect, a show about DSS. This is the second part of the 7th episode of Season 2. And, of course, if you have missed the first part, you should hurry back and check that part out before watching this part, because you know the rest by now. But keep with me, people. So, anyway, today we are talking about tournament decks that are suitable for tournament beginners. And, yeah. So we have said that we have divided up into 3 categories of decks that we think are suitable for tournament beginners, and this is the second kind of deck we think are suitable. A bleed focused toolbox. So Isak, why don't you tell them what we're talking about?
Yes, this is the...
This is Dog.
Yes, this is Dog. Very famous, by now very famous Ventru anti-tribute grinder, originally put together by Hugh Angsising, but this is from a French player called Matthias Skubish, maybe. I don't know, I don't want to beat his surname name up too badly. Anyways, this is in the category Bleed Heavy Toolbox, and this is now it's getting a bit more complex than the Kaiser deck we looked at. And basically we have more or less the same ousting mechanic. It relies on bleed cards, in this case governs, and bleed modifiers, bonding and conditionings. But instead of relying heavily on stealth, rely on slight combat, some tapping masters, and the ones that are from bonding to oust.
And there's still a lot of deflections and
even more so than the Kaiser deck, or at least more defense. There's bounce-wise, strictly speaking, only 2 more bounces, so it's not huge, but the reaction pack is 25 cards, so that is kind of big.
So why do you think it's suitable for beginning tournament play with?
For 2 things. First being that it's very efficient. I've seen players in all ranges of skill and Vitas play this deck with success. We made a really long episode where we talked more of the in-depth analysis of this deck, but I'll just take the more obvious parts, and that being that you're very defensive. You have block, you have bounce, you have delaying tactics, so you have basically all you need to defend yourself. And when you end up in a combat, if you block something, or get blocked when you perform actions because you only do 1 and 0 stealth actions, you have prevent and presses and weighted walking sticks to deal with that. So you get very resilient.
Survivability.
Yeah, exactly. So a long-term game, if you just manage to stay alive, most of the times you will get a few VPs and like manage to do it all. But yeah, I don't know if Adam have something to add. Feeling a bit like I'm talking in circles.
Right. Some other reason why we like this deck is that if you just play all the cards you draw, say it's your turn and you have all your untapped guys and you have governors. If you just play all the governors, either superior or inferior, and as you need them, conditioning and bondings, and then if you get blocked, you play all the combat cards, and later on when there's your prey's turn or your predator's turn, you just try to react a lot on, maybe not that much on the prey, but more likely on the predator. And if you get into combat at that point, you use all the combat cards you have then. And if you just do this, you play all the cards that you draw, and like at the first given moment, you're gonna end up quite well. it's really good to just hit people for 2 and not take any damage, and it's really good for bleed for 6, obviously. So in that way, like the lowest possible, if you're playing kind of good but you're not thinking that much, the lowest possible is quite high, but also the highest possible you can bring a deck like this is really high. This could possibly be one of the tier 1 decks. So it gives a new player at a tournament, like if you're playing several tournaments after each other, you give a lot of possibility to train yourself and evolve as a player.
Yeah, you get the possibility to evolve with the same deck and not get tired of it. If you play a Dementation Win, you will get tired after one tournament. This is actually something to have with you for a few tournaments and actually evolve. And I think that's a really good addition.
Yeah, because VTC is so complex, it's very... You gain a lot by playing the same deck over and over again. Over and over and over and over again.
We talked a little bit about... Oh, sorry, Isak, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the combat. It's really hard. It's hard to play combat as a beginner, but this deck actually includes combat. What do you think about that, Adam?
What goes a bit back to what I said earlier, is that most of the cards are kind of non-committal in a sense. None of them costs anything, and Weighted Walking Stick even stays on the vampire. So if you play them in the wrong combat, so if someone combat ends against you, you will have the Weighted Walking Stick left for another combat. And worst case scenario with the Preventers is you just gain a bit of blood. So they're kind of good in most situations, and in some situations it's really good to avoid being rushed to torpor, obviously.
And all the guys can play the combat cards, and it's very non-committal combat. You don't have to go in, try to torporize someone with your combat. It's just more like defense and maybe hitting someone for 2.
And it's not the main part of the deck.
But this deck, it gets more complicated with this deck, because I've seen even very experienced players do mistakes with bombing, because the stealth is only on superior when it comes to making an oust attempt. And the press prevent, since the presses are on superior fortitude, I've seen players make mistakes and thinking they have superior fortitude where they don't. So those are like the pitfalls that you can encounter if you play this deck at entry level. Like getting the right vampire to block to be able to play the combat cards in the upcoming combat and such.
Yeah.
So those can be the pitfalls with this deck, I think.
Yeah. And of course,
it sounds really arrogant to say this, but I think I'm the first person to admit that matching like superior disciplines with superior disciplines can be very, very difficult to remember sometimes, because there's so much going on.
I mean, matching superior with inferior.
That is what I usually do. It's when you're supposed to match superior with superior. It's...
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, if you want to compare this to the other deck, this has the advantage of not including stealth, which of course counters what I said earlier about how stealth is good for a noob. So I need to explain that, and it just comes down to card cycling. Stealth, if someone realizes you're playing a stealth bleed deck, they're not gonna block you. It's kind of stupid to just block a stealth bleed deck if you don't have any real chance of blocking. So stealth can quite easily clog your hand, and hand clog is like an art to manage your hand in some cases. And stealth is one of the largest biggest obstacles with hand management, I think. So in this deck you don't have to think about your hand that much, since you don't have the stealth. So it's a bit of an advantage.
Yeah, but it's also, when you start playing it more complicated, the deck, it's all about managing your hand through the Heart Initiatives and Black Horse Tanner, and that's where you really get into, because that's the beauty of the deck. It's so hard to have the perfect hand, but you can also just play your hand. If you follow me.
Yeah, and this particular iteration of the deck, there's 4 Dreams of the Sphinx. Well, I guess that's to even further make you the master of your hand and manage hand clog issues that might occur.
Yeah. Okay. Have we talked about the skill cap?
We touched on it at least. There's a part that you can work with this deck over a course of several tournaments and see yourself improve with the deck. Because you're starting to learn like the finer parts of Vita's like card management and such.
Okay, so Isak, just a little bit quickly then, the strategy of playing this deck as a beginner.
The basic idea is to bring out the highest available vampire in the crypt, make that vampire do Superior Govern, and you keep doing this, bringing out vampires and doing Superior Govern until you've emptied your initial 4 vampires, get all of them into play. And then preferably you'd want the 5th vampire as well, but that's very much up to the game if you can afford that or not. But after you have those 4 vampires into play, you start doing this empty your hand dance. So during your turn, you try to empty every action and action modifier you have to get as many reactions as for the other player's turns as possible. And when there are the other player's turns, empty your hand of reaction cards to be able to get action modifier to be able to bleed in your turn. This sounds very simple, but it isn't. Because it's always judgment calls. If you're too wasteful of your cards, you might end up not being able to defend yourself properly, or end up not being able to oust properly. And if you are too hesitant, then you don't draw any new cards and you get a stagnant game.
Yeah. Adam?
Yeah. I'm not sure what else to say. You have quite few cards of the tapping kind, like another iteration of this deck might have more Anacrob Makers and more Misdirections, and then that becomes a bigger part of it. But you still, the Anacrob Makers and Appendix versions should be saved for ousts, I think. Play them on your prey to get a victory point. But that's just when you draw them, you play them, or when you have them out, you use them.
So are there...
Another thing about the skill cap is that for, I think this deck, the Grinder, have a lowest bar, so to speak. Like, if it's played at its worst, that is a lot worser than the Kaiser deck. That is, if you're really fresh to the game, I'd say start off with the Kaiser deck, because it's easier to perform well with that than it is with the Grinder. The Grinder is maybe your second tournament, or if you have played some casual games and start to get comfortable with the actions and action models and reactions and stealth and intercept and presses and maneuvers, and you're starting to get a grasp of all the different words that float around. Then you can go on to the Grinder, but I think it's better to start off with the Kaiser deck.
Any other similar decks, Adam?
We talked about Aramanes. If you're playing Aramanes, really bleed heavily, like lots of presence and stealth as well. You include a bit of combat most of the time, because why not? They have some vampires with plus strength, and they have a really good block card in Speak with Spirits. And that's played kind of similar. You try to empty your cards.
It's basically kind of played the same, but you block instead of bounce, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's the action, not the bleed part, the reaction part, and the combat part.
There is a German player who's played a Tremere deck that works kind of similar. That he calls it Triple B. That's Bruce, Bleed, and Block. And it basically is the same basic idea. You have Dominate, you you have a huge reaction package, and you have some slight thaumaturgy combat. I have not seen it myself, and I have not played it, but I imagine it's very similar to this in the way you play it, and like the general like, experience of it. I guess that the Venture Grinder is stronger. If not, it has a lot of more tournament wins anyways. So it could be something if you have more Tremere cards available or prefer the Tremere for some other reason.
Yeah, or maybe just know that 4 other players are gonna play this deck.
Yeah,
Because there is a huge contesting problem with this deck.
Also, you could play Eurobruya, bleed heavy Eurobruya as well. They have can block with second tradition and do combat with guns, which is a non-committal combat as well, I think, in the same way that Fortitude is. And then you bleed with Dominate, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's a little bit tricky playing guns, I think at least.
you don't get as wide crypt as you do with the Grinder or a Tremere deck.
Yeah.
There are fewer Eurobruyas, sort of like something 2 obvious vampires and something 2-3 sidekicks that works kind of well.
Yeah.
So that's the obvious drawback with playing them. But it's a good option if you have more of the old group 1 and 2 cards.
Yeah. I think that's about all we have to say about that.
Yeah.
If you're more interested in playing this kind of deck, I strongly recommend that you check out our Grinder episode. I don't really remember which one of it is.
It was the first.
The first of the first season, I think.
First of the first season. Oh, nostalgia.
Yes.
Okay, should we move on?
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so this is a little bit more complicated because I think you have to have a little bit more understanding of the table that you're sitting at. But it's the Breed Boon. And Adam, will you take us in?
Right. I can. I would actually like to say I disagree with you on that point, but I'll talk about the deck first.
Yeah, do it.
So this is just one of a lot of Breed Boons, and most of them carry the same strengths and weaknesses. So, like, you don't have to make the Ravnus one. But what we're looking at here is the Ravnus one. And it is the old crypt without Zonda. And this is, of course, to get more diverse crypt. If you rely on Zonda or some other Libon, the crypt will be a bit worse. So it's just choose this deck for this reason. Yeah, it's you get Embraces, you vote Contagious Boon, and use Elder Sarkolo to push it through.
Yeah. Okay, so Isak, why do you think it's good for newbies or tournament newbies?
It's very self-centered.
Such an egomaniac. This deck.
God, you got me. But it's very self-centered when you play it. Your strategy, okay, if you get blocked, and then that's real trouble. Okay, you know. But as long as you don't get blocked, you just play your cards basically. It's very hard for someone to put a Volt Lock on you if you have managed to get enough Embraces off. So, yeah, basically, it's self-centered, you do your own thing, you have a lot of minions, so, yeah, that's the
You basically
biggest part of making the Breed Boon good for a new player.
Something that's this deck does not have any discipline cards at all. There are the Liban element. You have to play Mozambique Allure to get benefit from Elder Sarkolo. But outside from the Liban element, you don't have the problem of trying to match disciplines to cards. So it makes it a bit like it's not a huge choice which vampire you're acting with. Almost every single vampire is equal.
And
Yeah, like the matching problem I touched on earlier is non-existent here. Basically, you just have to keep track of who is Libon and who's not.
and you will hopefully have a little counter on that card.
What else? Yeah, the events, they are quite strong against like the discipline events, Slow Withering and Veil of Darkness. I can bring them up.
Yeah.
But it does not require you to actually do anything. You just play them, and if you're really fresh to the game, someone else will have to know the rules or remind other players. But
That shouldn't be a problem.
yeah, everyone should be able to play according to the rules. I think this is an assumption we can work with. So yeah, if you play the Slow Wither and Veil of Darkness, it's really strong just to have them out and play, and it doesn't require you to think for yourself. You can just ignore them.
And that can actually mess with the heads of more experienced player, more experienced tournament player, because they have to change a lot of things that they have to do, and they will kind of get them to the same level as you. You could argue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, these are very good cards, and they work well, as Adam said, because you don't play disciplines at all yourself, so you don't really have to think that much about them. But on the other hand, it's another element in the deck. You not as well, but you could play without them, and it wouldn't hugely impact the deck, I think. So if you want to make it less confusing and more streamlined, you could remove the events altogether, I think.
Some basic, like... you can go on, Adam?
No, it was a bad point. Go on.
Okay. Some basic stuff that you say is like, to a beginner, of course, is just do your thing, just do your embraces, and just bleed with them and vote a little. Don't try to get confused with someone. Say, yeah, you should do a Contagious Spoon over the table, or... Because, I mean, you are voting, and there's a lot of options when you vote. You have to interact with other people even if you don't want to.
Yeah. Here you could easily take this advice: when you play a con boon, don't ever make it for any other clan than Ratnos.
Especially if you're gonna play this specific deck list, which has 5 Contagious Boon in 77 cards.
There's a few.
Yeah. Of course, this deck will have... it's quite extreme in how many embraces this deck will have in play, because of Ravenous Carnival. So the Contagious Boons will be more effectful. So you might gain as much pool as if you had 8 from the beginning. But using one entire Contagious Boon on someone else is... I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, there might be instances, I just want to point it out, where it's beneficial to do some other clan than Ravnos. But if you play a tournament for your first or second or third time or something like that, then do call the con boon for yourself. Always look out for number 1. Be a egomaniac, as Anders put it.
Yeah.
Okay, and now I'll talk about how I disagreed with you, how it doesn't matter that much what your opponents are playing.
Okay.
So, I think you're right in that it matters that other people can block you, and it will really, really hurt you.
Yeah.
But...
and voting was one of my points as well, but yeah, go on.
Yeah. But if someone can block you, it doesn't matter how good of a player you are, you're dead. Like having a blocky deck next to you, and you're playing a Breed Boon deck, you won't be able to win that game, most likely. It will take close to a miracle. And in that way, it's non-discriminatory against if you're playing, if you're a bit less experienced. And if it if you don't have a block deck next to you, it doesn't matter what other people are playing. You're gonna vote your combos anyway. And the Elders Akolo, they are normally enough to get you the vote lock. When you play them, it shouldn't be a problem to get vote lock. And if it is, I think even a really skilled player or a really experienced player will have a hard time.
Yeah.
Maybe you can make some deal at that point, but in most games that won't be necessary. In most games where you can win, you can ignore other players. You just take your action, hope you don't get blocked, you play the Elder Stakolo.
Yeah. There are a few things here that are kind of difficult, and one of them, I think, is being the timing of Week of Nightmares. There are situations where it's not beneficial to play, and you should. That is like one of the biggest judgment calls you have to make, I think, is to how long to wait with playing it, and when is the time right.
Yeah. And
Because like a second turn or third turn Week of Nightmare, for most people it's kind of obvious that it's not that beneficial.
yeah.
So somewhere along down the road it's very beneficial, because effectively making every Ravnos twice as good. Because the additional bleed.
You should probably.
And you can talk a bit about something that's quite fun that I think someone posted first on the news group, and then later on Extrala linked it up on his blog. It's kind of a like humor programming thought process of how you play this kind of deck. So it's like if you're in your master phase, you will be playing Week of Nightmares if you have more than 15 guys, and if you have less than 15, you will play Ravnus Carnival or something like that. And then in your minion phase, if you have an Embrace, play it. If you have a Conboon, play it. And you can have like this priority list, which is kind of exhaustive. It covers how you want to play this deck in almost every situation, and that makes it harder to make a wrong decision.
Yeah. And that's the really strong part with this deck. It's really hard to make the wrong decision, and it's a strong deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
But
if you want to evolve as well as a player with the deck, it requires some reconstruction of the deck, but then you can start to include more comboons and more kind of resources contested, and you then gain the ability to interact cross table. And this way you might, if you have, when you gotten the experience to recognize it, can cross table oust when so needed. Like this deck is more or less totally shut down by someone who will play, say, an Auspex Weenie maybe, or an Anarchist Uprising.
Maybe just
Anarchist Uprising.
You're fucked up.
Anarchist Uprising should be able to defend against, since the Elders of Core are a reaction card as well.
Yeah, you probably should be, but like.
Yeah, you need to.
You can always say you never know, but some voting decks can have an extreme voting capability, like a few inner circles and adjust the car, and then maybe some push. You can get really far.
Maybe just Orlando.
Yeah, that is an example of good pushing.
Yeah. So anyways, of course, the defenses, you have a lot of pool, so you don't really have to do any reactions, which is good.
Yeah.
I don't think we have that much to say about breed boots.
This specific deck has some more advanced concepts, and that's the master part.
Zip gun.
The one lone zip gun. No, I don't think that will impact most games that much.
Okay.
No, I was thinking about Parthenon, 4 Parthenon and quite a lot of Masters, as well as Anthelios. If you want the deck to be able to adapt to more different situations, adding this module to a Breed Boon deck could be beneficial. And especially Last Stand, which I know Ruben Feldman likes quite a lot with Anthelios. Like if you want to make it a bit more complicated, you could
That's
include
a
the
way.
masters like this.
Yeah, but you can also extract them, just the events and the master, some of the masters, and make a more simple to-the-point deck. If you think there's too much going on.
And that's like a good thing to think about. Like it just struck me now is that one part of playing tournaments or getting into the tournament scene is the skill to change your deck. Like if you go to your first tournament with a 60-card deck that only breeds and boons, and then later on you might want to add some more like longevity elements to the deck. You can later on include Parthenons and Anthelios and Last Stand, for instance, to make the deck a bit different but still the same, and that way you can learn a bit about deck building as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. So yeah, similar breed boons. We should probably point out there are a lot of breed boons floating around out there.
You can
Isak.
make with La Sombra, Daughters of Cacophony. You can
Are there any
make,
ones of these that are not good for beginners? Are there any more complex? What's the differences? More than clan?
there's some differences, but essentially they're very similar. You have the Brew Anti-Tribute with Unexpected Coalition. The basic thing is, if there's cards that gives 1 vote per member of that clan, it's good to make a breed boon, because you want to breed to get more votes to be able to boon for even more. You have the Toreador Anti-Tribute, you have the Ordinary Ventrus. Am I forgetting someone?
Let's see. You can do it with the Asamites, the Alamites.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I was thinking about that, but that's a little bit more tricky.
It's a bit
You
different,
have to
but
believe.
you get to have
Yeah.
Obfuscate in that deck, which could help you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are many different options if you want to build a breed boon deck. Like the Elders are Kulu, you need a lot of them, and it's expensive card. It's more than $10 a piece. So this particular breed boon might be on the expensive side, but like say playing Unexpected Coalition is kind of cheap. They're common card from a very recent edition, so no problem getting hold of them. And the Brew Anti-Tribute are not that popular, so shouldn't be any problem finding someone who could trade you some vampires.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that about wraps up the breed boon situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like to ask you guys, like when we went through the other decks, there was a lot of dominate going on. There's usually a lot of dominate in our shows. People might notice, but why are there so much dominating this one, Isak?
Because this, I think, is undisputed, that Dominate is the best ousting mechanic in the game, and if you think that, I'm not trying to put some value to that, so whether or not you think that is good or not, I think most people agree with that. That is because it's very clean. It's only a 2-card combo, the Govern plus Conditioning, and you can play them each on their own. You can bleed with only Govern, or you can bleed with only Conditioning, so you don't need the combo. But if you have the combo, you bleed for 6, which is sick. And the superior version of Govern is great, because it's sort of a crypt exploration, and you get a reduced price on all your vampires. And it also have this what's it called? Cumulative effect. Like the more vampires will dominate you haven't played, the faster you will get a new one.
Yep.
So the first vampire gets the slowest, is ordinary pace, and then it gets faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
So I think that's why they tend to show up.
Also,
Adam?
of course, the fact that you like the strongest bleeding or ousting discipline in the game, that also has bounce.
Yeah.
Is of course a big part of this. It gives you really good defense as well as really good offense. So
I think Mouse in Matrix said it the best. It says, no, it wasn't. It's Dozer in Matrix that says everything the body needs.
Yeah, he probably said that. But you get to be offensive and defensive at the same time.
yes, you do. And also, new players or semi-new players should not forget Dominate. It's a prevalent part of the tournament scene. So playing Dominate yourself, you will realize what you're facing. A bleed for 6 should not be something that you
Are not expecting.
exactly.
Yeah, that's very, very true. But yeah, because the first thing, most of the time I check for when a predator turns out to the first vampire. What is this vampire? Do it have dominate? It's like a really important question because it dictates so much how you need to play the rest of your game. If your initial predator is a predator with dominate.
Yeah. And then of course, like when you know how to do damage, you will know how to defend yourself.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And overall, like, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say that's some Zen shit. So that was all. You can go on.
Okay, I think I have something of more value to add.
Yeah, I hope so.
Let's hear it.
All three decks we've presented are basically acting decks. The Adventure Grinder have a big reacting element, but also very big acting element. Like all the decks we presented is that the player playing them do something actively instead of reactively, trying to read the opponents and their deck choices and what their strategy is. So you don't really have to evaluate your opponent's choice of strategy. So some decks, like rush decks are the biggest example, where you need to know the other player's strategy to be able to decide your strategy based on their strategy. But with these decks, you more or less can be the egocentric maniac and just play your action cards and get results through that.
These are the kind of decks that has the initiative. A lot of other decks, say a block focus deck, an Auspice Weenie, or a rush deck, will rely a lot on timing and waiting. Or the same goes for tap lead as well, of course. You need to wait for the ideal opportunity to play, make a play, like put someone in torpor or go for the oust, or But these decks are all you start early with your ousting, and you do it throughout the entire game.
So that brings it in what you just said. What not to play, because it's what not to play for a beginner is it's of course what calls for great knowledge of the game, as you said. Block, combat, tap lead. Are there any more of these?
Big guys and the master heavy decks. Though most master heavy decks are very introvert and egocentric and self-centered decks and playstyles, and you don't care that much about the other players' games, as more or less as much as you do when you play the decks we've presented here. But you need to have so good knowledge of what the other players are doing and what you're doing, so you can optimize your play. Because you play high caps, you have a few actions, and you try to do maximum damage with each action. And picking when you play your third Azure tablet and picking the wrong 13 cards, and especially the card you put into your hand, if that card is a worthless card, or a card that really doesn't benefit you in this particular situation, you can end up losing the game.
Yeah. Adam, any thoughts?
Some decks do a lot or is focused a lot on the duel, the heads up, or the 3-play situation, having control. With other like combat or tool ups or like decisions, I need to face this player and this player to be able to win. And I think those kind of decks should not be in the hands of a less experienced player. It should be, every single prey should be almost the same. You should be ousting that player with the same mechanic in the same way and as fast as you can. So you don't need to think about, should I cross-table oust at this situation? Is it beneficial for me to cross-table oust? Which is...
Or should I let my prey oust before me? And
yeah.
so much.
Because these kind of decisions occur quite frequently in betas, and you shouldn't playing a deck that needs that to win if you don't have like the knowledge. And this is of course decks that are weak to specific decks, like having a huge weakness.
Yeah, and a part of the strength being that you have the ability to choose which 3 you play, the 3-play game or something like that. And another thing that's I think it's worth mentioning is that, as I see it, the rush deck are the most difficult deck archetype in the whole of Vitas. So that, in my opinion, should be the last pick. Like that is the final year. That is exam day when you play rush deck. Like after you played a very active deck, play something tap leady or Venture Grinder-esque. Those kinds of deck, like being the step number 2, and the master decks or high cap decks being somewhere in between the grinder and the rush deck. Yeah, in my opinion.
Of course, the block decks hard as well to play.
Yeah, for the same reason as the rush deck. Maybe not as hard as the rush deck, because you don't have to like torporize people to survive. You can actually play a wake and then play a bounce, or play a wake and then play a delaying tactics. So you still have the last say, so to speak. So I put them as to be easier to play than the rush decks. So the absolutely most difficult thing you can play are rush decks, in my opinion.
Yeah, because a block deck, if you just play fast and block to stay alive, you can quite often win a game just by doing that. But a rush deck is quite vulnerable to being ousted. It has to think a lot about defense to be able to survive. And also with Sweeney, you can survive, or a block deck, you can survive until you have won, just if you stay alive. Not always, in some situations it will be harder than this, but yeah, I actually agree with Isaac. Rushing is probably harder, because it's so much harder to stay alive with rushes.
Yes. Yeah, well, we will probably keep on talking about that subject some other time, because it's a big one. Anywho, do we have any last thoughts for our new tournament players before we leave? Isaac?
Don't think, just pick a deck and go to tournament and play, and expect to get shafted. And please don't get pissed off. It's like, see it as a learning experience. This sounds kind of cheesy, but like I think see it as a learning opportunity, because Vita is very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. Like the deck I got my first tournament with, I played 3 tournaments before I managed to win with it, and countless of casual games for years before that.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of time to get to know a deck that well that you actually do manage to get a win.
And this is also my suggestion, is that you try to stick to the one deck. Of course you shouldn't, it's unreasonable to think that the first deck you play in a tournament will be a deck that you're comfortable with. But after you've tried a few out, and you feel like, okay, I could probably go for this, try to stick with it as long as you can, because the game gets more fun the more involved you are and the more you know, and like the more you realize of the intricacy of the game. This will be lost if you start playing different decks. You'll have to go back to the basics, and it'll make it less fun, and you'll hurt your results as well. So I think sticking with one deck is really good for both results and having fun.
Yeah, and sticking to it doesn't mean that you have to play it every single game. I just want to point that out.
Of course.
Of course. Casual games are for trying things out, but try to stick it with it for deck building between tournaments and during tournaments to make it improve and yourself improve with it.
Yeah. And my final words is don't trust anybody. They will all cheat you and lie to you and and leave you violated. So probably try to get your own game going and ignore everybody else.
Yeah, don't be afraid to make someone upset, because
and don't. Yeah.
they're either they're playing bad or they're being upset because they're trying to manipulate you.
So just say no. Yeah, that's the and what you just said, Adam, is so actually true. If someone is angry at you, there's just two sides. Actually, they're bad players, or they're really, really good players, trying to screw with your head.
Either way, don't fall for that kind of manipulation.
And if you're interested, like if you want the learning experience of other players' constructive criticism, talk to them after the game. Because at that point, they might actually tell you the truth.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
I try to be as honest as I can after games. If people ask me why did I do that, why did you act that way, why were you so nice, or why were you so mean to me, and yeah. So well anyway, that's a different discussion as well. Now we will end this show. So okay, that's it for this time. And so it has come to this. Okay, so thanks everyone for watching. And remember, if you have any thoughts, comments, or ideas, you can post them on our Facebook page or send an email to the address below. That's causeampersandeffect@gmail.com. And remember to like us on our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. After this, we will of course post a thread on the weekend.net forum where you can continue the discussion and maybe talk a little bit about your first experiences at tournaments. What did you do and how did you do it? We would like to know. So goodbye and have a good night. Say goodbye, kids.
Goodbye, kids.